Okay, so a little bit about Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust. We are one of 46 wildlife trusts working across the UK. We make space for wildlife by working in more than 50 nature reserves and other lands across Hampshire, and this creates a growing network of wildlife havens across the county and as well. We help bring wildlife back from the brink by helping declining species like the Duke of Burgundy butterfly, water vole or avocet. We stand up for wildlife by acting as the voice for wildlife and wild places with government and local authorities and other organisations. And we also connect people and wildlife through sessions like this and also hundreds of other events, activities and classes that we run throughout the year with the aim of connecting people with like the wonderful wild places and wildlife around us. So just quickly look through the learning objectives for today. We are going to start the session by looking at the benefits of learning outside, and then we're going to move into looking at numeracy specifically, and we'll spend the bulk of the session looking at different activities that can help you explore numeracy outside in your school grounds as well. You'll see there were lots of links to other subjects that will come up as well, which I might refer to here and there, but I'm not going to go into all of them. So we'll mainly be focusing on numeracy today. The session should be about roughly an hour of me going through the slides and talking, and then we'll have half an hour at the end for questions as well. So, benefits of outdoor play. There's lots of different benefits to be gained for children playing outside. You know, it creates a whole new element to their play and a completely different environment to explore different concepts in as well. Unfortunately, children today spend less than half of the time playing outside than their parents did, and that often is true at school as well. And this leads them to live increasingly indoor, sedentary, sort of virtual lives, especially at the moment. I think this year more than any other year, although obviously this isn't normal circumstances. But you know, over as a trend, this has quite a significant impact on their physical health, emotional well-being, and just their connection with the natural world and with their communities as well. And just taking play outside, as I mentioned, you've kind of got this whole different space available to you that can really bring some really great physical health benefits. So if you think about balancing on a log, you're improving your balance. You're using different resources that will have a positive impact on strength and dexterity and coordination, and this enjoyment of using your body outside can continue through to adult life as well. So lots of positive benefits we have there as well. In terms of pupil performance, it also impacts that. So Ofsted did a study in 2008 which reported that when planned and implemented well, learning outside the classroom contributes significantly to raising standards and improving people's personal, social and emotional development. And Natural England also did a study in 2010 called Learning in the Natural Environment, and that found that when children took part in outdoor learning, they performed significantly better on achievement tests, and they also expressed high interest and well-being and low anger, anxiety and boredom. And that then links through to a whole host of other mental and emotional benefits as well. So there's quite a wide body of research now that demonstrates the positive impact of nature on emotional well-being, and that's something that I've certainly felt. I think lots of people have noticed that again this year in particular. For children in particular, green has a positive impact on their brain because it helps to develop cognitive ability, and again that has links back to the performance side as well. I don't need to tell you about the benefits of learning through play, but the point I wanted to make here is that whether it's climbing a tree, balancing along a log, or swinging from an outdoor rope or swing, children are learning to take calculated risks and play in a different way outside. They have a lot more opportunities to explore different skills and enjoy that sort of connection to nature, which will hopefully take them through to adulthood as well. So I want to have a little look at different levels of outdoor learning. And learning outdoors can be as simple as taking a book and reading underneath a tree on a sunny day. And that will afford you many of the benefits that we already talked about, just by being outside and enjoying that space and that different environment as well. And that's something we would always encourage you and children to do with your children. But a lot of what we're going to be looking at today is sort of more around the level 2, which is learning with the outdoors. So this is more about using the natural resources that are available to you outside and integrating that with your learning. So for example, this could be, again, it's a really simple example, using sticks and stones instead of beans for your maths activities. So something very simple that you could do, but hopefully you'll have lots more ideas at the end of this session of ways to explore that. The third level is takes a little more time, and doing lots of this sort of outdoor learning will build up and help to lead to this. And that's more about getting to know an area really well, and then in turn being inspired by that area to influence your learning as well. So thinking about starting to take your learning outside, I don't know how many of you will be familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is basically a model that describes the needs that we all have as human beings. And the idea is that the needs lower down the pyramid, so the physiological needs, need to be met before you can start addressing the needs that are higher up the pyramid. So, for example, you're not going to get very far talking to someone about how they can improve their self-esteem if they haven't got access to food, because they need that basic need met in order to be able to start thinking about themselves in other ways. And this is quite useful to think about when taking learning outside. If you look on that along the physiological needs, you've got water, food, shelter, clothing, and some of this will obviously be familiar with you as well in terms of just think about learning in general. But things like shelter and clothing come into the fore a little bit more when you're thinking about learning outside. So with that in mind, one of the main things that you will need to consider in, is the Great British weather, which can be quite variable, and also can have quite a big impact on the amount of time and the way that you can use the outdoors and how much children get out of it as well. So it's worth, obviously having awareness of what the weather is doing and thinking about the clothing that your children need in order to be able to kind of, have those basic needs met and be able to move on and really get the most out of their learning outside as well. And it is important to prepare for this side of things, because really, if you really want to make outdoor learning work, you need to give it equal status to indoor learning in terms of planning. So it is worth having a think of some of these things as well. I mean, like a simple thing is, can you have, and you may already do this, can children have a pair of wellies available to them in school? Those all-in-one waterproof suits are fantastic. Can children provide them themselves? Can parents help out? Perhaps it's something your PTA could fundraise for. That was something I definitely would recommend having available to you if you possibly can. I know it's difficult at the moment with, we can't share clothing and resources so easily. So if you've got enough for the class and a child can have their own for the year, it just will mean you can get so much more out of your outdoor learning. Layers are really good, and you know, for changeable weather as well. And obviously think about hats and gloves and sunscreen and sun hats in the summer. It's easy to forget it can be warm when it's cold and autumnal. Muddyfaces.co.uk I would recommend if you do want to have a look at outdoor clothing to support your learning as well. It's worth also having a think about your site and where you might have wind tunnels, where it gets hotter and colder, and what, you know, in the summer, especially where you might be able to make use of shade for your learning as well. And have a think about as well if you can use the weather to your advantage. So think about the activities you want to do. There's something we'll talk about later about using puddles. So if it's been raining, then can you get some, you know, go out and use those puddles to your advantage as well? So that's worth considering. You may already have some outdoor shelter you can use. Lots of schools have really lovely like umbrella houses and sails and all sorts of lovely things. But again, another way you can extend the amount of time that you have outside is by having to think about, again, thinking about your site and what shelter is available to you and whether you can create something. So it's really easy to get, if you just get a tarp and some bungee ropes and like hook the bungee ropes into the corner of the tarp and string that up between some trees or some posts, it depends on what's available to in your grounds, but that can create really quick and easy shelter and creates quite a nice little space outside as well, which is really nice. You can get really professional with it, and there's lots of videos on YouTube how to build proper forest shelters and things, which you will probably last you a little bit longer. But if you want something quick and easy, then yeah, carbon bungee ropes does the job as well. The other thing to think about actually, if you want to extend your time outside the classroom, especially at this time of year, is there anything you can bring out with you? So can you bring at this time of year blankets out or something to help keep children warm for a little bit longer? Or in the summer, again, think about shade. Is that something you can provide yourself as well? I've got to talk about health and safety because it comes into everything, and it's just like this again. COVID, it's come straight to the fore of it all. If you did a risk assessment on a classroom, there would be plenty of things that would come up and make it sound like a horrible, scary place. So there are going to be things that you have to be aware of, but as in the classroom and anywhere else, it's just about being sensible and being aware and taking some sensible precautions. So most school grounds are quite sensibly planted, and you probably don't have a lot of things like berries and nuts and prickly plants, but if you are spending time outside, it's worth just checking and talking to your children about plants that it's safe to touch and use and ones which you should leave alone. So that's just a reminder on that one. Similarly, if you have any areas of long grass, just again useful to make sure that the parents especially are tick aware. So this time of year we should be past tick season, but certainly over the summer, sort of April to October time, it's useful to be aware of the risk of ticks and just make sure parents are aware of that and limit the Lyme disease as well. And on the subject of insects, we'll talk about Minibeast later. Again, useful just to explain to the children that it's best not to try and catch flying insects because that avoids a lot of the stinging problems as well. More generally, if you're playing outside, there is a risk that children will be exposed to different bacteria, and there's therefore a risk of bacterial infection. You will obviously have your own washing facilities, but to stop children going backwards and forwards between activities, it can be useful to take a bowl of warm water outside as well, warm safe water. And if you have a digging area, then make sure you've got a tarp, perhaps weigh down with some stones or logs or something to cover it, just to stop it being used by animals like cats and foxes as a toilet, basically, when we're not using it. So that's just something else to think about as well. On a more positive note, if you find yourself missing your whiteboard outside, you might want to have a think about how you can share different ideas and capture some of the learning that you're doing. And one of the ways that I find quite useful for doing that is you can get just a sheet of plain white paper or different coloured paper, and if you laminate that, you can sort of string up some string outside and peg the laminated sheets to it, and then you can use whiteboard pens on them, and it's just a nice way again of if you're doing rally or something like that, you know, any way you want to record information or share ideas outside. Maybe we'll think a little bit more about numeracy now. Some of the activities we'll look at will have very direct links to maths. So if you look at the slide there, for example, that's about using natural materials to explore fractions, and there's a very direct link between the activity and the resources that you're using. But there are other activities we'll look at where the maths is a little bit more indirect. So it's more about, so if you think of something like, oh, I'm getting a warning sign saying that my connection's unstable. So if there are any problems, Becky, if you could let me know, if you could drop me a text if there's any problems, that would be great, thank you. So yes, if you think about something like the mud kitchen, that's much more about having a setting and having an environment and encouraging play, and then drawing the maths out of that as the children play. So there's different ways that we'll look at different activities to bring that out. Just as a general point, it can be really useful to use movement when exploring maths concepts. So, and again, you've got this advantage of being outside and having all of the space available to you. So think about how you might be able to use that. So for example, could you create a number line outside and have children jumping and hopping along it? Or can they clap or they count? So any ways that you can kind of get movement in will help embed some of those concepts as well. And you also have lots of natural resources available to you in your school grounds, hopefully. So leaves, for example, again on the slide, you can see there's a maple tree leaf that has 5 points. So leaves can be used for counting 5s. If you think about like the other leaf, like beech leaf or something like that, that's that more traditional sort of almost egg shape, they have 2 ends. So again, you can be used for counting in 2s. They can be used for counting or sorting, a whole range of other things. Sticks has to be probably one of the most popular outdoor toys available. The amount of times I've seen them in swords or sticks or guns or swords or guns. Then they obviously have great potential for being many things. But in terms of numeracy, they can be used to make hopscotch, a number line we've talked about already. They can be used to create different shapes. You can explore fractions. You can use measuring and comparing and stirring in some of the activities we'll talk about later as well. There's also quite a lot of symmetry in nature. So again, if you think about again on that slide, there's that leaf torn in half. I mean, that's being used to explore fractions, but equally could be used to explore symmetry as well. Seeds are often symmetrical, and most insects, if you do bug hunts, are symmetrical as well. So there's lots of opportunities to look for that when you're out and about as well. And tessellation is something you might not stumble upon so readily, but insect eggs can be really nice examples of that. So, for example, if you plant some nasturtiums outside and put them in a nice sunny spot, then you would probably get, but there's a really good chance you'll get the large white butterfly laying eggs, and it lays them in batches on the underneath of the leaf. And those are beautifully tessellated. So you can create opportunities to look for things like that as well. Right, so starting to think a bit more specifically about activities, and I wanted to start with a mud kitchen because it's just playing with mud is just intrinsically fun, and I've never, it's always a hive of activity around a mud kitchen, and it actually helps children develop a lot of skills skills and abilities which really underpin numeracy and outdoor learning in general. So I wanted to start with that. And apart from it being really tactile and really building that connection to nature and it just being fun to play with, it actually makes you happy on a chemical level, which I think is really, really interesting. So basically, by being outside and playing with mud, children are exposing themselves to friendly soil bacteria, and that prompts an immune response in their body, which actually then triggers the production of serotonin in their brain, which is obviously a happy chemical, which the chemical makes us feel happy and relaxed and reduces depression and anxiety as well. So it literally, I mean, it's fun, and it also literally chemically makes you happy, which I think is very bad. And the other benefit of that immune response is that it has a positive impact on your immune system. So society is generally a little bit too clean now, especially now, but also generally is a little bit too clean, and our immune systems aren't getting that sort of helpful challenge. And this is leading to increased levels of childhood illnesses and immune disorders and allergies as well. So again, playing with mud can just help balance that a little bit, and provide a benefit to our immune systems and our happiness as well. It's also really great for developing creativity. If you've ever tried to navigate a muddy puddle, you will be assessing risk and problem solving as well, which are also, particularly problem solving is really important skill to underpin numeracy. It can help develop some of those developmental milestones. Again, if you think about things like hand gym opportunities, and also develop gross motor skills as well, things like balance, so the example I gave previously with working your way around the mud. And also helps develop risk awareness, which we talked about as well. And that just, it's all helping to challenge children in different ways and develop skills that they will take through to adulthood as well. So the idea behind a mud kitchen, hopefully you're familiar with what I mean by a mud kitchen. Basically, this would be an area that can be either something as simple as a digging area and a bag of equipment that you take out to use to explore, which I'll talk about a bit more fully in a minute. Or it can be, I've seen some amazing structures that look like, like play kitchens basically outside. And the idea behind it is that children can use free or structured play to explore lots of different concepts, mainly around volume and capacity measuring, and also it's really useful for getting a lot of mathematical language in as well. So as I mentioned, it can be as simple as a bag of pots and pans and spoons and a digging area, and you can start with that and still explore many of these concepts just simply with that. If you've got someone who's handy with a saw and nails and a hammer, then you can build something and add a table. You can add cupboards if you're very adventurous. You could put a washing up bowl into it, and you can have somewhere to hang utensils. The limit really is only the resources you have in your imagination, basically. Pallets are quite often seen mud kitchens made out of pallets. They make good kitchens. And you can buy kitchens or use a play kitchen outside, but we would always encourage you to reuse materials that you already have where possible, rather than going and buying new, just because it's more sustainable. And also you get to tailor it as well. It's nice to have your mud kitchen set up in a nice sort of cozy corner, if possible, so you've got a nice safe area to explore. Just have a think about the fact that it is going to get very muddy. So if I would avoid any hills for obvious reasons, and also things like the edge of a playground, because once you've finished all your activity and moved away, you're going to leave a muddy area that's going to be very slippery as well. So also think about that as well. And it's good to just get as many different bits of equipment as you can to use in your mud kitchen. Anything like jugs and cups and pots and pans are going to help you explore some of those concepts around volumes and capacity. Spoons and things like that are also useful for measuring. Sieves are great just for, again, expanding the play, really. So there's loads and loads of different bits of equipment that you can use. That's something that quite often can be donated by parents. A lot of people have spare pots and pans and utensils that they're finished with, and they can donate. Or it can be worth trying catering businesses as well if they've got something that's not, they don't want to use professionally anymore, but it's still good enough for play. Then that's worth exploring as well. It can also be useful to so make sure you take some mortar out to your mud kitchen if it hasn't been raining, you don't have any naturally available. But you can also introduce other different materials like sands and like wood, like wood chip and things, and clay, or it depends on what you've got available to you, what your soil is like and everything. But there's lots of different. The more you can bring into it, and there's lots of different ways you can use it. So you could explore quantities. So what happens if you add something or take it away from your mud kitchen as well? One really nice way to explore quantities, and many of the other concepts that we'll talk about, is through, if you can get like a blackboard to take outside, you can get blackboard paint to create one, or you might have lots of schools have those little whiteboards that you can use as well. And if you have one of those for that you don't mind getting muddy, for your mud kitchen, then it can be really nice to either write recipes for your children to follow, so really simple recipes like a spoon of this and a jug of this, or depending on the age of your children, but encouraging them to write down, record what they're doing and write their own recipe for other children to follow perhaps. So that can be quite a nice way of exploring quantities as well. So what happens if you add more of something or take something away, or what's thinking about mud cakes or like mud pies, which one is the biggest one and which one's the smallest, and get some of that comparative language in as well. That's also quite useful for looking at using utensils and things like that as well. So you can explore concepts like which is the biggest, which is the longest, which is the shortest one, and also positional language as well. So the pot is behind the spoon, pass me the jug that's on top of the table, or whatever. So lots of opportunities to sort of draw out some of that language as well. There's obviously lots of, if you put some scales into your mud kitchen, you've got opportunities for weighing. But even if you don't, you can still lots of chances to measure things and compare. Again, lots of ways you can integrate counting and sorting, adding things and taking them away. So there's loads of different ways you can. This is one of those activities where the maths is a bit more indirect, and you're drawing it out as you go. Another nice extension to the mud kitchen is to have children making perfume and potions, and there's similar equipment that you would have for the mud kitchen, like empty bottles and jugs and things like that. And the idea behind this is that they can use the natural resources in your school grounds to make their own perfume or potion or whatever they want to do. Like I used to love making George's Marvelous Medicine when I was younger, and my children like it as well, actually. So this is like the outdoor version, or you can have it as perfume instead. So again, another good way to investigate measuring and counting and volume as well. Again, you can introduce the idea of a recipe to this. Or another nice way to do it is if you have like a resource that's really special and scarce. There's something like chalk paint, which you can make by just scraping chalk into a powder or kind of grating it, and then you can add some water, and that gives you a chalk paint. or you can make like fairy dust, like a bottle of liquid fairy dust, which is basically biodegradable glitter and water. And I think you put washing up liquid in there as well for some recipes. There's lots of ideas online. And you can have something that's quite a scarce resource, as it were, and you're only allowed one spoonful of, and that again encourages children to measure things out and you know, so food solutions and benefits, and you can get some counting in there as well. Definitely make sure you have water for that one in a bottle, and a funnel is helpful as well for getting the helping children to fill their bottles and jars, and hopefully at the end of it they have a lovely perfume or cushion they can share with you without even realising they've been doing that. Another activity which is really great for exploring a lot of different maths concepts is a Minibeast hunt. Again, this is one I know a lot of schools will do already, but I thought it was useful to include it because there are lots of different ways you can use it, and also just to talk through some of the equipment as well that can be helpful. So as it says on the slide, this is basically, this is about going out and looking for lots of different Minibeasts, and that can be great for counting and sorting, ordering, and all of the things it says up on the screen. And the idea is you basically just go out and have a look for Minibeasts. You can do it, again, at its most simple form with paintbrushes or spoons, and you can use them to just gently brush or scoop Minibeasts into a pot. So, for example, I can't see myself, excuse me while I just try and get myself so I can make sure you can see this. So it's useful to have some little pots to put in your Minibeasts in, like on the slide. And if you have anything, this is a really lovely magnifying glass that you can get the handheld. This one sort of sits on top, that makes sense. It sits over the Minibeast to have a good look. But anything, a handheld one also will do the same job. And you can do it just very simply with that. So with some paintbrushes, some pots and magnifying glasses to have a really good look at what's out there. Or another nice way to do it is to have a, if you've got a white sheet, you can put that underneath. If you've got any overhanging branches, you can put a sheet underneath it and shake the branches, or gently bash them with a stick or something, just you have to supervise that often. And then what happens is lots of different insects and Minibeasts will fall out of the bushes and onto the sheet. So that can be a really nice way of just quickly seeing what's living in the bush. So that's quite a nice one as well. If you can get hold of white trays, so these are, I use a NHBS as a supplier of ecological equipment, basically, but they also supply quite a lot of schools equipment, so all your pots and magnifying glasses and things like that, you can get from there as well. But if you can get hold of any white trays, they can be a really nice way of, again, drawing out some of the maths a little bit more with a Minibeast hunt. So, and its most simple form, you can just ask children to complete a tally of what they find, or how many different Minibeasts, or how many spiders did they find, how many ants did they find, how many ladybugs did they find, and record it in a tally. So that's, again, a nice simple way of doing this activity. But if you introduce something like the white trays, you can have, for example, one that's got 6 on it, and the next one will be 8, and the next one is more, and you can get children sorting Minibeasts into how many legs they've got. So like insects will go in the ones with a 6 on it, 6 legs, and then yeah, if you have one with an 8, you put all the spiders in there, and then you're introducing things like sorting. You can count how many you have of each. You can use your outdoor number line perhaps to work out how many Minibeasts you have in total. You could explore what happens if you take one of the trays away. How many do you have left? So there's lots of different ways that you can look at use numbers basically. Use Minibeast to explore numbers. And again, on a just a simple level, just using expanding their natural curiosity to look for shapes in insects, and again, if they stay still long enough, then starting to think about symmetry as well. So there's lots of different ways you can use them. Another really lovely one, which is always really popular, is something called Hapuzomi, or Kitty Dashi, as someone I know calls it. And basically, this is about making symmetrical prints. So using green leaves to create prints. And there's lots of obvious crossover here with art and design, but you can also get some maths into there as well, because basically what you do is you have a piece of cloth, and you go and get children to collect some green leaves. So they unfortunately can't use leaves that have fallen, but there are lots of on the ground, lots of brown leaves on the ground at the moment. They won't work. So you get them to go and collect some nice green leaves, and they can arrange them on their cloth, and then put another piece of cloth on top, and basically they whack it with a mallet, or you can use like smooth stones and things like that as well. And what happens is you get these lovely prints, like in the picture there. And you get one on the bottom piece of cloth, and you get another on the top bit of cloth, and it forms a symmetrical image. And you can make that a bit clearer by perhaps having one bit of cloth that you fold over. You could create a butterfly shape in that, and then again open it up and explore the symmetry of butterflies, and whilst also creating this lovely bit of art as well. So that's a really nice one. And then once you've got them, they can be flags. You can use them. I've done them before where I've got the children to work out what sort of leaf they've got, and then you can use them like to label the. So say you've got an oak leaf, you can write oak on your cloth and hang that on the tree, and it can be like a label for the type of tree it is. You can tie them to sticks and have them as flags. It's like, yeah, they're just it's lovely. One of my favourite activities. Just a couple of things to think about. Obviously, you need to watch fingers with this one. This is one best done in small, well-supervised groups, especially with younger children. I have done it with preschool age children, and they don't always get such a clear print, but you can still explore the concept of the print on both sides. But just think about the surface you're doing it on, because it doesn't work so well on concrete like a playground, because you tend to get the like the bubbles from the cement, well, it's not cement, but concrete, whatever the playgrounds are made of, that tends to come through. And also if you use on grass, obviously you don't get enough of a impact. And similarly, if you use hammer, that's a bit too brittle. So wooden mallets are quite good. You can get them, actually you can get 10 from eBay for about £10. I actually have had, we have a men's shed, like organised community organisation, or I don't know if it's a charity. They made some for me. Or if you're interested, if you join Wildlife Trust, one of the Wildlife Trust Forest School courses, then you can learn how to make your own wooden mallets as well. So, so yes, various options for doing that one. Just watch little people's fingers as you're doing it. Make sure they're holding the edge of the cloth. If you're interested in that and would like to see it in action, have it explained, with a bit through a video, Surrey Wildlife Trust have a nice video of that on YouTube as well. Another really nice activity to explore size and weight and position, and think about a bit more about spatial awareness as well, is having children to create little cuddly animal shelters with cuddly toys, which is just, again, a really nice activity. Really simple and easy to do. A lot of schools have a class mascot, so you could ask the children to create a little home for them. Or if you can get hold of, again, most parents I think would be happy to cut down on their cuddly animal collection. So you might find that you get some animals, cuddlies donated from parents. But yeah, the idea behind this is, yeah, you literally just take children outside, encourage them to use natural materials that they find lying, loose natural materials that are available to them on the ground. This time of year is really good for this because there's lots of sticks about, and just get them to create a little shelter for a cuddly toy. Again, through this, they're exploring, they're having to think about what size it needs to be, what size branches or materials or twigs or whatever they're using, how they're going to position them. And again, there's lots of those different concepts start coming out just in creating these lovely little shelters as well. You can see in that top picture, you can just about see that's where one child used their Hapazonia print as a flag for their animal shelter, which is very sweet. And you can obviously also extend this into den building and get some of those more physical sort of strength benefits as well. And if you're going that way, then you can also introduce tarps and bungee ropes and bulldog clips and all sorts into some proper den building. But this is just quite a nice way of doing it without having necessarily the space on the branches available to you. So that's quite a nice thing to do. Another idea for so looking at a different area, different sort of some different numeracy concepts here, is looking at using threading to explore repeating patterns, sequencing, counting, and symmetry. So this, again, as an activity, I'm sure is something you do in a classroom a lot, because it's very good, again, for those fine motor skills, as well as all of those mathematical concepts as well. But just wanted to introduce the idea of being able to use natural materials to do this as well. So you can make some really nice beads out of wood. So you can, if you've got a branch, you can, if you have someone again who is able to create little discs, cut through the branch and create little discs for you, you can use those, and you also need to drill a hole through the middle. Conkers, acorns and shells, it depends on where your school is and what you've got available to you. But all of those things, you can drill a hole in the middle of them and use those for threading. And again, it's just using the different materials, different space, and it's just a different way of exploring some of those ideas as well. If you can't create your own beads, then you can do it with fruit as well, and that can be really good to then hang up in trees afterwards for birds or for butterflies as well. We'll also use or may use those as well. So lots of different ways you can explore using different materials for threading as well. And actually, sorry, one just to again draw out the maths a little bit more on that one. You can also use that to, again, as you would in a classroom anyway, encourage children to find different combinations and also make sure, get them to work out if they've used every option, and you can expand the range of materials you give them to do that as well. Okay, so I talked about puddles earlier, and this might be something that just happens. You have a puddly area in your school grounds that you can take advantage of, but you can also make your own puddles as well, which can be quite a fun activity. And again, this is similar to the concepts that you'd explore with a mud kitchen. Lots of ways to explore quantity and spatial awareness as well. So. And basically, you can do a lot of this with a puddle that naturally occurs, but you can also have children dig their own puddles of different sizes and different depths, and you can line them with clay so that they hold water as well. And then you can get children to try using different vessels to fill the puddles as well. So which fills it the most, a spoon or a jug or a cup. Like how many spoonfuls does it take to fill the puzzle? How many cups does it take to fill the puzzle? Depends on what size your puzzle is, I suppose. You can introduce a ruler and get children to measure how deep the puzzles are, especially if they're already you know, out on school grounds. Then you can go around with a ruler and explore them as well. And again, it's just a really fun way to play and explore. Like fun way to involve water in your water play and in your maths, basically. Another activity, which again is really good for exploring sequences and repeating patterns, symmetry, and also different shapes that naturally occur in nature, is to get children to make a crown, or you can use strips of card to make bracelets, or just leave them as strips of card, it's up to you. So that's, again, it's a really simple one to do. You just need the card or a crown template and some double-sided sellotape, and you just stick it, as you can see in the picture, you just stick double-sided sellotape on your crown or on your strip of card, and you can ask children to go and look for, depending on what you want to explore, you can ask them to look for different natural materials to stick onto their crown or stick onto their bracelet. And again, to sort of draw out the maths of that. So you could say, use it to explore shapes and ask children to go and find round objects to put on their crown, or you could have them collect some round objects and some long ones and explore those like patterns and sequences. Again, you could use them to demonstrate symmetry and all sorts of things as well. Just a couple of things to think about if you choose this activity. The first one is, I always find it really helpful to have a small rubbish bag with me, because you tend to get a lot of the strips on the double-sided tape. By the time you've taken all of those off, you will want somewhere to put them. So that's just a handy little practical tip. Have somewhere to put your rubbish. And it's also useful to talk to children about how pollinators will use flowers, and it's really important to leave those for our bees and our butterflies, because they really need them, they rely on them, and we rely on pollinators. So so it's useful to have a talk you know, beforehand, to explain that to children. If they want to use flowers, so actually the picture I've used isn't a great example because it does have an entire flower in it, but on the, so the blue one is, but if you look further down, you can see child there has just used individual petals. So that's much better. If you want to include some colour, and again, there's lots of links with art and design here, you can also use this to explore a range of shades and colours and things as well. So if you do want to introduce something like that, then I would encourage children to just take a little fingernail sized like a petal or piece of colour, and then integrate that as well. You can also get, if you go to a florist's, often they have like not dead, that would be very helpful, old flowers that perhaps have broken, their flower head's broken, so they're having to throw them away. And I've gone into florists before and asked if they will let me have them to do this activity as well. So if you just wanted to expand a little bit on what you had available in your school grounds, then that's another way you can bring some still natural resources into the activity as well. And you can also use, I mean, the pictures there of leaves and plant flowers and petals and things, but you can also have some sticks put on there and stones. Catkins are quite nice on there as well. If you have any dry moss, so there's lots of different, you know, even if you're have a limited number of trees or plants available to you, there's lots of different ways you can still use different natural materials with this one. Just remember my earlier comments about berries and nuts and that sort of stuff, which I'm sure is very obvious to you all. I want to also include Woodland Shop is a really nice activity, again, to explore some different elements of maths, and this also supports a lot of the other activities that we've talked about as well. So the idea behind this is it can be like just a blanket on the floor, or a section of your play area, or whatever's suitable. And the idea is that you bring in natural items that you wouldn't necessarily find in your school grounds, or perhaps in your immediate area even. So depending on what is naturally available to you, this could be things like pine cones or shells, it could be some unusual seeds, it could be flowers from the florist that I just talked about. And you have these available, these are your items for sale in your shop. And you can create some tokens for children to use sort of as money. So you can start exploring that concept of money and counting and things like that as well. So in the picture there, those are just, again, wooden discs from a branch that's just been cut into discs, and then holes drilled into them to represent different values. So you could use something like that. You could use stones with numbers painted on them. That's another way to do it as well. And you can start, you can get some children to run the shop, for example. So you can have one activity going on, perhaps that you want to do with one group, and then another group could be running the shop, and you could have them price up your shells, for example. So children can then come with their tokens, their wooden discs of money, and buy these extra resources, and then they're having to start again thinking about counting. You can bring addition, subtraction and multiplication into it as well. So how much, if you want a shell, it's 2p, or 2 of your tokens, and if you want 3 shells, then how many tokens do you need? So you can start bringing some of that in as well. Or the other way you can do it is to get them to use it as a swap shop. So if you want a pine cone, you need to go and find me 5 sticks. And if you want 2 pine cones, then how many sticks do you need to go and collect? So you can also, if you haven't got tokens or anything you can use available to you, you can also just use it to get children to go and explore your area and use it as a swap shop instead. So that's quite a nice one to run alongside things like the Hakazemi or the Make a Crown, anything like that, where you might want to bring in additional resources, or for your mud kitchen as well, you might want to introduce some other materials through that one as well. So just want to run through some other activities quickly. So spotter sheets. So these are ones where you might have a spotter sheet for signs of spring, and you would traditionally go around and say, yes, I've seen a butterfly, yes, I've seen a flower, yes, I've seen a leaf in bud or something. But you can also use them as a tally to count how many of each thing you see. It's quite a nice activity around leaf matching that encourages sorting as well. So that's where basically you get children into groups, and you give each group one leaf from all the different bushes and plants or trees that you have in your school grounds. So they've got one of each, and they have to, as a group, go and match that leaf to find it in your school grounds and pick another one, so that they end up with a pair. And then through that, they're obviously sorting their leaves as well into pairs. So that's quite a nice one as well. You can extend that by giving them an ID sheet as well, see if they can work out what leaves and what plants or trees you've got in your school grounds. So that's quite a nice one. My Street Tree is an activity you'll find, it's linked later on the Wildlife Trust Wildlife Watch website. And it's basically about getting to know a tree local to you, so on your school grounds perhaps, or in a local area. And part of that includes measuring the tree around the trunk. So you can do this obviously with a measuring tape or a bit of wool and a meter rule or something like that. So that again is just a nice way of using natural resources to explore some of those concepts as well. And yeah, you can also start getting to estimating and comparing and things like that as well. you can get children to make bugs out of natural resources, and again, this could be an extension on your Minibeast hunt. So if you've noticed that an ant has 6 legs, then can they make an ant out of you know, stones and sticks and things, and make sure they've got the right number of legs, and can they make sure it's symmetrical? So it's another nice way of exploring some of those ideas. And just again, very simply, use your outdoor area for to do a shape hunt to look for different shapes that are around as well. And again, that can lead into some of the other activities like taxonomy or the making a crown, because you can use that to explore explore shapes and then move on to use them in different ways as well. I'm not going to spend too much on this slide because a lot of it is stuff that we've already talked about, really. We talked a bit about using mathematical language. It sounds really obvious and you'll be using that all of the time. But when you're outside and you're in a different environment and you're dealing with natural materials instead of, you know, more traditional maths resources, it can be easy to slip into, you know, have to remind yourself to keep using that, and there's lots of opportunities to as well. I'm sure you already have explored ways to use items from your PE cupboard outside, but PE hoops can also be quite useful as a way of exploring sets and classifying and things like that as well. We talked about using natural resources already. They obviously have the benefit of being free and very tactile, and ability to explore some of these concepts on a different scale. So, you know, it could be painting numbers on trees or counting trees or something like that. It's a very different scale of working than you can do in the classroom as well. And there's obviously also lots of opportunities for collaborative play, helping to develop problem-solving skills. Things like you can estimate lots of things outside. I mean, you can inside as well, but again, it's just extending children's experiences basically, and that can apply to any of the activities we talked about. So it could be about whether a child has enough money to buy what they want in their woodland shop. It could be about how many steps it is to your mud kitchen. It could be about what holds the most water. So there's lots of different ways that you can get that, estimate things and talk about all these activities before we start. Okay, just nearly coming towards the end here. I wanted to talk a little bit about the South Downs Education Network, who have facilitated the development of this session. So Hampshire Wildlife Trust is a member of this network, which is a collective of over 100 education sites, centres and practitioners who are based around the national park, and who all deliver activities for schools to help them better understand the special qualities of this protected landscape of the South Downs National Park. The network offers the curriculum linked sessions and activities as outlined on the slide, and the idea is that the national park itself can provide the setting or the context for a locally relevant curriculum for your school. So members of the network offer a range of trips, outreach sessions, online lessons, and downloadable teaching resources. So it's worth getting in touch with the South Downs National Park network as part of planning, so they can support you in getting the most out of your trips. We talked a little bit about the benefits of learning outside the classroom already. Obviously, for most people, trips into the national park aren't going to be a weekly luxury, but by taking part in the training today, you're helping to build learning outside the classroom into your school's curriculum and affording some of those benefits to your pupils and your staff as well. So understanding more about the national park from nature to recreations to jobs can really be a very important part of young people's development, and it helps them feel part of the landscape, not just while they're at school, but for the rest of their lives as well. So if you wanted some more information, you can go to the Southend National Park website. The details are on the slide there. Or you can also talk to your outdoor education advisors at your local education authority. So they can offer educational visit coordinated training and lots of help and guidance around practical matters around planning trips as well, such as health and safety considerations and compliance and things like that. One thing just to mention on the South Downs National Park website, it's worth having a look. They also have quite a lot of teaching resources and grants on their site as well. So for example, they have a travel grant, which if your school has more than 10% of pupils who are eligible for free school meals, then you can claim back travel costs to visit sites within the national park, which is quite a nice one as well. I won't linger on links and further reading because these are all included in the handout, which will come out after the session. But if you did want to find out a little bit more, there's some books there that are definitely worth having a look at, and again, lots of links to partner organisations and resources as well. Okay, thank you very much for listening. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to come back and have a look at the chat area, and if anyone has any questions, then feel free to use the raised hand icon as well. Does anyone have any questions or comments on anything that we talked about or anything you'd like to know more about? If we've got, well, just in case there's anyone who's formulating or typing a question, I just wanted to show you these. If you wanted, we talked a lot about numeracy, obviously, because that was the aim of the session, but there's obviously lots of opportunities to expand a lot of these activities into learning more about your school grounds and the nature and the wildlife that's already there. And these, I don't know if you've come across the Field Studies Council do these really nice fold out laminated guides. They're not too expensive, they're generally £4 or £5 maybe, so you don't need one per child, you can have a couple and that will do as a reference guide. But they're just really nice visual guides, visual aids, lots that will support Minibeast hunts if you're doing things like that, but also if you're doing things with plants. They do a massive range. If you're doing beach, if you're lucky enough to be near a beach, there's some really good resources around that as well. So that's well worth it as well. Was that a question about where the FSC guides are available? Yeah, sorry, I didn't know if that was my sound that cut out. You can buy them from the Field Studies Council website, so they have a full range on there. I think I'm sure I've seen them in other, and that's where I've gone to buy them direct from there, because they just have the biggest range. And if you're after something in particular, then you'll know you'll find it there, and you can sort of explore what they've got a bit more. You might be able to get them on, I don't know, places like Amazon or eBay, I don't know, but that's where I go. Field Studies Council. Okay. Does anyone else have any other questions, or would you just rather go home? Becky, was there anything that you wanted to add?
No, that's everything from us. I'm just typing in the chat, folks. If you are interested in finding out more about what Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust can help you with, if you live in either of those two counties, I will post a link. If you don't live in either of those two counties, and I did spot even there were some people who might be joining us from Scotland, so if you don't live in our country, there is a wildlife trust in every single country or county across the UK, so there'll definitely be someone out there who can help you with your outdoor learning if you haven't already discovered them. That's everything from me, really.
Lovely, thank you. Okay, well in that case, I will end the session and let you all go home. Thank you very much for joining, and if you think of anything afterwards, there's a handout coming out shortly as well with some inputs. But I'm sure Becky won't mind if I presume there's a contact on the booking page. I'm sure she will mind if people think of anything afterwards.
Yeah, there will be. There'll be contacts on the pages and places to go on the handout, which will come out to you tomorrow morning, everyone. So you'll get an email from us tomorrow morning with a handout with the information.
Thank you. Okay, thanks very much then. Bye.
Thanks. Good night, everybody.
Bye.